Have you ever heard of a great ancient civilization, as advanced as Egypt or Mesopotamia, that simply vanished? A civilization with huge, planned cities, sophisticated plumbing, and a vast trade network. Yet left behind no palaces, no grand temples, and no statues of kings. This isn't a fantasy novel. This is the story of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the greatest mysteries in human history. And today, we're going to unravel it, using cutting-edge science to answer a question that has sparked heated debate for over a century. Who were these people? And what is their connection to the people we call the Aryans? Between 2600 and 1900 BCE, while pyramids were rising in Egypt, a spectacular urban culture blossomed across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, was massive, covering nearly 1 million square kilometers. Its cities, like the famous Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, were marvels of engineering. They had streets laid out in a perfect grid, intricate drainage systems that would be the envy of many modern towns, and a system of standardized weights and measures that tells us they were master traders, reaching as far as the Persian Gulf and Central Asia. But here's the puzzle. Despite all this organization, there's no clear evidence of a powerful ruling class. No opulent palaces, no monumental temples, no statues of all-powerful pharaohs. It's led some experts to wonder if they had a more decentralized, perhaps even an egalitarian form of government. The biggest mystery of all, their writing. They had a script, found on thousands of small seals, but to this day, no one has been able to decipher it. We don't know what language they spoke, what they called themselves, or what stories they told. For generations, this silence has been filled with speculation. Who were they, and where did they go? For the longest time, the best guess came from comparing them to later cultures. But in the last few years, a revolution in archaeology has given us direct answers. Ancient DNA. Scientists have successfully extracted genetic material from human remains found at Indus Valley sites, most notably from Rakhigarhi in India. The results, published in top scientific journals, are fascinating. They show that the people of the Indus Valley were a mix of two ancient populations. First, a group we call ancient ancestral South Indians, who were indigenous hunter-gatherers, living in the subcontinent for over 30,000 years. And second, early farmers who had migrated from the Zagros Mountains of modern-day Iran thousands of years before the civilization began, mixing with the local population. And here's the crucial part. The DNA shows zero genetic trace of people from the Eurasian steppe, the group associated with the later Indo-Aryan migrations. This is the smoking gun. It scientifically confirms that the Indus Valley people were not the Aryans of Vedic texts. They were a deeply rooted indigenous South Asian population. So what language did they speak? While we can't be 100% sure, most linguists believe it was likely an early form of a Dravidian language, the family that includes Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada, spoken today mainly in southern India. The evidence: Dravidian-sounding place names in the Indus region, Dravidian loanwords found in the earliest Sanskrit texts, and the fact that these languages thrive in the south, possibly because descendants of the Indus people migrated there when their civilization declined due to climate change around 1900 BC. So, to be clear, the builders of these incredible cities were indigenous South Asians whose genetic and cultural legacy continues across the subcontinent today. So, if the Indus people weren't the Aryans, who were? This brings us to the second part of our story. The term Aryan comes from the Sanskrit word Raya, used by the people who composed the Rig Veda, the oldest scripture of Hinduism, sometime between 1500 and 1200 BCE. They described themselves as horse-riding, cattle-herding warriors who worshipped gods of the sky. For decades, a fierce debate raged. Were these Aryans foreigners who invaded India, or were they native to the land? Today, the scientific consensus is overwhelming. The evidence from three separate fields, linguistics, archaeology, and genetics, all points to the same conclusion: migration from outside South Asia. First, linguistics. Sanskrit, the language of the Vedas, belongs to the Indo-European language family. Its closest relatives aren't found in India, but far away on the Pontic-Caspian steppe, in modern-day Ukraine and Russia. It shares a common ancestor with Greek, Latin, Persian, and English. Second, archaeology. The horse and the spoked wheel chariot are central to Vedic culture. Yet, they are completely absent from the thousands of Indus Valley sites. They only appear in the archaeological record in South Asia, after 2000 BCE, precisely when the Indus civilization was in decline. And finally, we have the DNA evidence again. Studies of thousands of ancient and modern South Asians show a major new layer of ancestry appearing in the population between 2000 and 1500 BCE. Where did it come from? The Eurasian steppe. This steppe ancestry is generally highest in northern India, especially among traditional priestly groups like Brahmins, and it decreases as you move south or among tribal populations. Now, this does not mean a massive, violent invasion that wiped everyone out. Forget the old, colonial-era cartoons of horseborn invaders conquering the land. Most researchers today believe it was a more complex process of gradual migration, cultural exchange, and intermarriage over centuries. These Indo-Aryan-speaking newcomers didn't replace the existing population. They mixed with the descendants of the Indus Valley people. This fusion created new social structures, new religious ideas, and ultimately gave birth to the early forms of classical Hinduism. So, let's clarify our terms, because this is where a lot of confusion comes in. When we say indigenous in the context of South Asia, we're talking about the people whose roots in the land go back tens of thousands of years. The Indus Valley people and their hunter-gatherer ancestors are unequivocally indigenous. They built one of the world's first great urban societies on their own terms. The Indo-Aryan speakers, by contrast, were relative latecomers. They were part of a massive Bronze Age expansion of steppe peoples that also saw them move into Europe and Iran. They brought a new language and new beliefs, but they built upon a foundation that was already there. The story of South Asia is not one of replacement, but of synthesis. Modern South Asians, from Punjab in the north to Tamil Nadu in the south, are all a mix. Everyone's ancestry is a tapestry woven from threads of ancient hunter-gatherers, early Iranian farmers, the great Indus Valley people, and the later steppe migrants. No single group is pure. This history has become highly politicized, especially in discussions around an ideology known as Hindutva, emerging in the early 20th century. Hindutva is a form of nationalism that seeks to define Indian identity in Hindu cultural terms. A central claim of some of its proponents is the out-of-India theory, which argues that the Aryans were native to India, that they were one and the same as the Indus Valley people, and that Sanskrit and Hinduism are purely indigenous creations with no outside influence. As we've seen, this theory is directly contradicted by all the available scientific evidence. The linguistic, archaeological, and genetic data all tell a consistent story. An indigenous urban civilization came first, followed by the arrival of Indo-Aryan languages and peoples from the steppe. And a centuries-long fusion of these traditions created what we now call Hinduism. However, it's also true that for many people, Hindutva identity is culturally and spiritually rooted in that Vedic Aryan tradition, its sacred texts, its rituals, and its social frameworks. This is a matter of cultural inheritance, and it's a valid part of modern identity. Just as an American of European descent can identify with the democratic ideals of ancient Athens without being Greek, a modern Hindu can draw their identity from Vedic culture, regardless of ancient migration patterns. The problem arises when cultural identity is used to try and rewrite history. The real story is so much richer and more complex than any simple narrative of purity. Hinduism itself is a testament to this grand synthesis. It beautifully blends elements from all its parent traditions, symbols like the proto-Shiva seal from the Indus Valley, worship practices from Dravidian village traditions, and the fire rituals and philosophy of the Vedic Aryans. In the end, the history of the subcontinent is a shared heritage. The Indus Valley was home to a truly remarkable civilization, built by indigenous South Asians. Their descendants are still here, forming the very bedrock of the population. The Aryans were migrants who arrived centuries later, bringing the language that would become Sanskrit and the beliefs that would form the Vedic tradition. Over millennia, these groups, and many others, merged and mingled, creating the incredible tapestry of cultures, languages, and peoples that we see in South Asia today. Understanding this real history, based on evidence, doesn't diminish any group. Instead, it reveals a profound and ancient story of connection, migration, and synthesis story that belongs to everyone. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration. See you in the next video.